So guys, today I'm going to be switching it up a little bit and doing it behind the camera, and I'm going to be switching up the video angles, hopefully more often, and doing different ones, or different types of video angles. Unfortunately, due to kind of how I set up and how I present things, it's not always easy to be in front of the camera, so this is one of those instances when it's not. But anyways guys, I'm going to be talking about my top 3 knife steels and for bushcrafting, and why I like them, and why I've kind of arrived at these 3 primary steels. So this is going to be a little bit untraditional in the fact that I'm actually going to number 1 right off the bat, and then I'll be getting into my top, or yeah, 2 and 3. I would say 2 and 3 are pretty much equal in likability, but the first off in my most favorite steel for bushcrafting, and I have used a lot of steels. I've used A2 1095, CPMS 30V, just many steels, including in fixed blades. I've used D2, just a lot of steels. So this isn't talking about I've just had 2 knives or in 2 steels and you know, that I don't have much experience. I do actually have a lot of experience with steels, edge retention, corrosion resistance, and so on. So I did arrive to this steel after a lot of research on it, and after a lot of personal testing to realize just how good a steel this is. So as I said earlier, this is CPM 3V, and the 2 primary reasons why I love CPM 3V is 1, edge retention. I've had this knife for nearly 2 years, and I've never sharpened it at all. I do strop it quite frequently, especially after any hard use. I just put it on a piece of wood and strop it back and forth pretty fast. And I don't do that for long, usually for like 30 seconds. And I've always found that that somehow just keeps the edge pretty much to where it's always been. But this steel is not a steel that dulls easily. This is kind of a blessing and a curse in the fact that it is also very hard to resharpen it if it ever does get to that point of being very dull. But this is not a knife that gets dull very easily. So the second reason, and actually this has really surprised me through my own personal testings, is corrosion resistance. I've actually, in hunting situations, left blood on the knife and let it dry overnight, and when I actually came back to clean it, there was 0 rust, 0 patina on it. It looked like it had never even seen, or you could barely even tell that blood had actually gotten on it while being wet and then was allowed to actually dry on it. CPM 3V has an amazing, in my personal opinion through personal testing, has an amazing corrosion resistance. In case you guys don't know, if you're not very familiar, blood is a lot more salty than water, even salt water, so that's why blood is essentially the apex of corrosion resistance testing, because if anything's going to get a steel to rust, it will be blood. But like I said, this steel, even when wet, of course, if blood can't do much to it, then water is not going to do much to it either. And I've been very impressed. You guys can see, generally, there's no patina on this edge or this blade. There is actually a little bit back here. I'm not actually sure how this formed. If you guys can kind of see, there's a little bit of patina back here. But aside from that, this knife gets very dirty, and Windex vinegar just cleans it right up. And it's why I like those 2 characteristics the most, or why I really value those 2, is in the field as a bushcrafter, we don't have a lot of elements to take care of knives, or it's a lot harder to bring tools and all the different necessities to clean and take care of knives into the field. And having a knife that's incredibly durable and overall very resilient not only makes my job of protecting the knife and making sure that it doesn't get all rusted out or something, it makes it a lot easier for me, and it means that I don't have to spend time, extra time, going out of my way to sharpen or to clean or to remove moisture from the knife. And though it may seem small, especially when you start to live out there or live out in the woods for a week or more, these kinds of tasks become really annoying, and you don't really want to do them, or really not be so dependent on care is really nice, and it also allows you to focus on other projects. So here's number 2 for my knives, and speaking of rust, I'm just going to let rust be on this, and the reason why is it's summertime and I'm doing a lot of hiking and running, and the sheath is up against, if you guys don't know, I do run this as a neck knife, as you guys can see, and naturally somehow it continues to do this. I've pulled this out of the sheath like this multiple times, and it's no big deal. This is only surface rust. It actually looks pretty bad, but it's really not that bad at all. And once again, WD-40 and Windex vinegar will take it right away. But this is Niolox, and this is probably my second favorite steel. If you can get past the fact that it does, a lot like 1095, need that extra step of maintenance to make sure that the edge stays dry or very dry, it is a really well-performing steel. It holds an edge for a very long time. Pretty comparable to CPM 3V. I will say, having worked with D2, which Niolox is essentially the European version of D2, it definitely doesn't hold an edge, or D2 does not hold an edge as well as CPM 3V. But once again, CPM 3V is like ultra level steel, whereas D2 Niolox is like higher mid-level steel. But overall, like I said, it's a very good steel. I like D2 and Niolox very well, a lot more than, I like Niolox and D2 a lot more than A2. I know A2 and O1 are pretty popular tool steels out there, but I really don't like them. Having used them, I personally feel that their edge retention is more like 1095 with a little bit more corrosion resistance, whereas D2, it does have a lot better abrasion resistance. So that is why D2 is pretty much number 2. But I don't know why Heli continues to mark their knives on this side. They want to be different, I guess. But generally, this is the show side of the knife. So in case any of you were wondering, this is the Heli Agen. And I chose this knife because this is a laminate steel, but the core is what I'm more but the core steel in this, the actual cutting edge, is what I like in the steels, and that is 5160. 5160, I still feel it's kind of like a steel that's highly underappreciated, especially for its price point. It's a really good steel, and I really love it. Like I said, that's why I feel D2 and 5160, in my opinion, for the liking of steels in bushcraft, they're really comparable. And honestly, the 5160, if I had to say, I'd probably say I like it a little bit more, because in my personal findings, I have found it to be a little bit more rust resistant than D2, but the edge retention on it is very good. It is probably the best knife as far as resharpenability goes. D2, Niolox, CPM 3V are both, or can be, quite tricky steels to get an edge back on, but once again, if you strop all of these steels after every hard use, you really will never have to sharpen them, and that's what I've been doing with them. But once again, 5160 is super sharp. You can get it super sharp, and you can get it pretty sharp out in the field, a lot sharper than either D2 or CPM 3V. And for that reason, and for the fact that it is a little bit more rust resistant in my personal testings than D2, that's why I like it. And once again, it goes back to that philosophy that I kind of set down with CPM 3V. That is, that the less time I have to spend with that steel, personally taking care of it, the more I like it. And that's really the core philosophy for my knife steel choice. If I don't have to take any care of it, that would be great, but of course these are steels and they do require some care. And so guys, that's pretty much all I have to say about knife steel choice like I said, CPM 3V is a great steel, and I'm actually quite excited. I'm not generally a cold steel fan, but I'm really excited to see that Cold Steel is starting to integrate this steel into more of their knives, and actually more budget-friendly knives, which is really lowering the gap for people to get into this steel, because for a very long time, really ever since the existence of 3V, it's been very hard for people who only want to spend $150, $200 to actually get this steel. I mean, the Bushcrafter here is around $250. So definitely there are some options with CPM 3V, and if you are thinking about choosing a knife for bushcraft, I would highly recommend trying to find a knife that has this steel. And it's definitely my most recommended, but if not, there are some excellent knives, especially made by Buck and Tops collaborations, that are made in 5160, or even this Heli. There are a lot of great knives made in 5160, not as many with D2. D2 is kind of revered more as a custom knife steel, so most of the knives are in D2, like this one, are in the 200s to 300s, but there are still some good deals on them. This one is like $365 or something like that. Pretty spendy, but it is still very good. Anyways guys, that's my steels of choice, and I'm out.